Okay. And what I'd like to say then to everyone is welcome to the session. The Board of Directors for the American Ethical Union is hosting and welcomes you to the session. This is intended to create opportunities for our members to ask questions and clarify their understanding of what it is we're talking about when we talk about the future of AEU right now, the various scenarios that are before us and the possibilities that we have there. This will end, or at least culminate, in a decision-making process at the Assembly on July 29th, 2023. There will be additional gatherings in June and July, so feel free to attend as many of these as you can, because there will be new information at each. We're here tonight to provide you with some information so that you can make decisions, informed decisions at the July 29th Assembly. There will be some resolutions developed to help determine that path as we go forward. Now, we know that change is always a challenge, but it's also exciting. It's an opportunity for us. We're all passionate about the American Ethical Union, and feelings run very deep on many of these issues. This is a chance to listen to each other, understand, share, and hopefully come to some point where we agree together. And part of that method is going to be the fishbowl. And Rachel is our Interim Executive Director, Dr. Rachel Pfeffer, is going to explain to us more about this fishbowl.
Okay. Hi, everyone. It's great to see you all. In fact, you're now on 2 screens. There's so many people, I can't even see everyone, which is really cool. Tonight I'm going to present a very short slideshow just to make sure we're all on the same page about what we're talking about tonight. We're going to be talking about different scenarios, and we're also going to use a conversation method called the fishbowl. We create a small group of people in the center of our Zoom screen by using Spotlight, and everyone else around will be listening, will be the audience, and we will be listening to people talk in the fishbowl. There will be 3 fishbowls tonight, and after each fishbowl, we will have a Q&A specific to the scenarios and an opportunity for clarifying questions, and specifically to the people in the fishbowl. And so I'm going to start showing the slideshow real quick, and just make sure everybody has their name, their pronouns, and your society listed in the box, because if we have to find you, the technology of doing that. So it'll be easier if you have your name there. So thank you for that. So we're here tonight to talk about the future of the AEU. We have 3 scenarios plus Hank Gassner's scenario. We have a 12-month sabbatical scenario, a keep the status quo scenario, and explore new formation scenario. Keep the number 1, which is busy reimagining scenario. So it includes a 12-month sabbatical. It's a period during which we would reimagine ourselves and engage in a movement-wide organizational development experiences. Organizational development is about research, analysis, self-awareness, developing experiences for group solidarity and unity, cultural analysis, exploration and reinvigoration of our core values, practices, accountability, addressing harms, deep conversations, and affecting team dynamics. All of that happens over the course of a year so that the AEU can look towards the future. The number 1 scenario number 1, supports engagement of all members in societies to create diverse, inclusive, and equitable rooms for everyone to sit at the table to provide ideas, dreams, analysis, and decisions. Scenario number 2 is business as usual. So basically, you would have the same capacity staff-wise, the same budget staff-wise, and continue along the way in the same way that you have been operating, say, for the last 5 years, for example, or longer. Number 3 is to explore, to consider merging, developing new formations, to stabilized leader certification, system-wide issues. I just wanted to say, and I know I've said this many times, that organizations that are at a certain point in their development where funds are diminishing, membership is diminishing, it is the board, it is the assembly or the governing structure's responsibility to look at this as a possibility. Okay, so I just want to say this, it's not specific to AEU, it would be across the board in terms of best practices of any nonprofit organization. And I want to say tonight, we're going to have a special fishbowl, which is going to have leaders in the middle of the fishbowl and clergy people who will, and we have a special guest, David Breeden, tonight as well, who will be talking, they will be talking specifically to scenario 3. So that'll give us a lot more content and information about that scenario. Very excited. Hank Gassner's scenario. Hank, I made a slide for you. And I basically tried to obviously make a very abbreviated. It's basically all 3 scenarios into the 4th scenario, which is Hank. So it would be organizational development consultant. It would be business as usual light. It would be explore new formations. So that's Hank's fishbowl. I did explain it a little bit ago. I just want to make sure you understand we're all going to be muted. Only the people in the fishbowl will be able to speak. And then afterwards, we'll do a debrief and unmute everybody or whoever wants to talk. The chat will also be closed during the fishbowl, and we'll open up the chat after the fishbowl is over for debrief. I just wanted to introduce again the 5 leaders who will be talking today in our first fishbowl. We're going to have 3 fishbowls, and this is going to be our first. And let me just quickly, well, I'll wait until we bring them into the spotlight and introduce everybody. It'll be very exciting. These are the questions for the debrief. Clarifying questions. Do you have a specific question for the fishbowl? And do you have clarifying questions for the scenario? And different people on the board will be engaged in asking you the questions. We'll be taking notes as well. I just want to remind you and put a plug in for the restorative justice training that's coming up. Jake is going to drop the registration information in the chat. And coming up May 31st, we have basically a webinar, what is restorative justice? And then the 9th and 10th, and it's 1-day training. We changed it instead of a 2-day, it's a 1 day. So please sign up for one of those days and learn how to become a circle keeper. Following that, those trainings, we're going to have another meeting on the 27th to develop a community of practice and get you started in being a circle keeper. Thank you very much for listening, and I am always grateful to the salmon who do the impossible. Okay, so we're going to get started, and Jake is going to highlight and was going to spotlight our guests. And first, and we have right here, Hugh Taft-Morales works and honored to be served as the leader of the Baltimore Ethical Society and the Philadelphia Ethical Society. Hugh taught philosophy and history for 25 years in Washington, D.C., and in April 2009, he graduated from the Humanist Institute and was certified as ethical culture. We have Jay Hooper, and Dr. Jay Hooper is an artist and cultural curator, clergy, and scholar for the community. They have served at the ethical culture and congregational humanist movements for over 8 years. And we have Anthony Cruz Pantojas, associate leader at Susquehanna Valley Ethical Society. They serve as the Humanist Chaplain at Tufts University, where they are also a graduate student in anti-racist curatorial studies. They also a PhD candidate in cultural studies. Anthony recently completed a Leadership for Social Justice program at the United Theological Seminary of the Twin Cities. David Breeden is the senior minister at First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, an historical humanist congregation. He has a PhD from the Center for Writers at the University of Southern Mississippi, a Master of Divinity degree from Meadville Lombard Theological School in Chicago. David chairs the Education Committee at the American Humanist Association and is adjunct faculty at the United Theological School of St. Paul, Minnesota in the Humanist track. And Greg Bonin. Greg was recently certified as an ethical culture leader last week at the AEU board meeting. Greg is duly affiliated as a candidate for ministerial fellowship with the Unitarian Universalist Association. He specializes in institutional and organizational facilitation, bringing a praxis grounded in embodiment, humanistic interdependence, and reflective inquiry. Thank you all very much for joining us tonight. And just so everybody knows, questions were generated by this group and myself collaboratively. We met before, we designed this, and they're gonna take it away. And I'm only gonna get involved if you go off track. And so you have 30 minutes to talk among yourselves, and I'm very excited that you're here. Thank you.
All right, awesome. All right, I guess we'll just start off with our questions. And the general question is, why are you here tonight? Is there a crisis at the AEU and the movement at large? Like, why are you here? And is there a crisis?
Can I jump in?
Yeah, come on, jump in.
So I want to say, first of all, that it's great to see so many people here. I mean, this is one of the joys of being involved in ethical culture and in humanism, is to see people show up. And there's so much that we do good in this movement. I just want to start with that, because I think it's important that we hold on to that. We give ourselves some compassion, some kudos, pat on our back. We have a great new certified leader on the panel, and Greg, congratulations. That gives me great joy, as you well know. So, and I have a tendency to run on, so I'm going to try to keep it short. Basically, do we have a crisis? Well, we know the demographics, we know the impact on our finances, and we know that the world is in crisis, for goodness sakes. So we're part of it, and I think we're wrapped up in that. But as Carolyn said, it offers us an opportunity. And I think to try to embrace the opportunity with joy is what we've got to do, because when you're scared, it's hard to be creative. It's hard to plot a path forward. So I hope that as we enter into this process, we've been in this process, people have been working very hard, that we really focus on that, on the potential for creativity. Because all of us here care about each other deeply as individuals. We care about each other's communities. And that includes ethical societies. It includes the people working on the national level and the training committees, the board. We care about each other deeply. And I think that the reason we're doing this is because we see people being burnt out. We're seeing expectations not matching results. And as a result, people are getting frustrated. So I just want to start with the high, admit the low, and hand it over to some other folks to chat. And I'll go ahead and I'll tap Jay so we don't have dead space. And okay. You can pass it. You can pass it, Jay.
All right. So I mean, I'm here because I love our movement. I'm here because this was my formation of congregational humanism. And so I'm a firm believer that we deserve to have assembly. We deserve to have formation. We deserve to engage that on various levels. And I will respect the fact that some of my friends are not comfortable with the word congregation. Please understand, I do not use it from a religious formation. I use congregation as an antonym for segregation. And so we need to push back on taking back words that belong to us, because we deserve to assemble. And so I want to say that that's the reason why I'm here. I am a product, from the Riverdale Society. I have been nurtured through the efforts of our leadership committee into and also found reason to reclaim my vocation again through the First Unitarian Society, which is the home of congregational humanism. In addition to, right, not only that, but I have been stretched and expanded due to my work at Susquehanna. And so when, you know, I think I really can say that when I look at our movement, I do so much running around because we are in crisis. You can't run as much as I run in a day, trying to get to every meeting, trying to read so many notes, trying to, I have to say, L Spirit is probably with me all the time as much as I am working, not only just working for you know, for the good of our organization, but to keep it real with our organization, that we are at capacity. Our bandwidth, we don't have very clear boundaries on programming and how we're going to put forth things. We are struggling with funding. We need to look at what that looks like for us. We need to recraft what leadership is. We need to recraft our place in the world, and how we show up as an ethical movement, and how we are also showing up as an ethical humanist movement and adjacent to the movement at large, because people should be able to find a home in our community. And when they cannot find a home in our community, which kind of in some way is like the Delta, it opens up the ocean to the ocean of humanism. I find that ethical culture is that little space that just right where the border breaks into the ocean, that we're that space, that we're the space for the atheist, as well as we're the space for the spiritual humanist. It might sound strange, but that's where we rest. And we hold a very unique tension to allow people to explore, know themselves, refine themselves. But can we do that in the state that we're in? I don't know if we really can. I can be honest about that. I don't know if we have the capacity. I don't know if we have the tools. I don't know if we have the infrastructure. And we are losing folk, not just Black and brown folk, not just queer folk. We are losing our own. Even after COVID, some have even left and have not decided to return. So we have to look at those situations regarding who we are as a movement. And when we call ourselves, are we really moving? Right? Or are we just an organization trying to hold space for honestly no one to come through us at all, taking up maybe space and meaning we might need to reimagine. So I'm here for all of that. I do agree with that we are in a very tough place. You know, what did the jam say to the peach in the jar? We both in a jam, right? So we got to figure out what we gonna do. All right, so I'm gonna pass that on. Anthony, would you like to join us?
Thank you, Dr. Hooper. Why am I here? I mean, I'm a cartographer and curator of meaningful experiences, not just for the American Ethical Union, but just for the movement at large, nationally and internationally. And I feel that it is an ethical imperative to show up for my communities, right? Even if we are not necessarily, kissing each other in the cheek, or we're, going down the street just happy, right? You show up when things get messy. You show up when things get complicated, when there are no answers, or there is the conundrums that we're dealing with, right? You come together as we're doing tonight. We put our knowledge, our experiences, our wisdoms together, not necessarily to provide the ultimate truth, but to at least begin to illuminate what is this generation, what is this moment in time requiring of us individually, as societies, but also as a national, international movement. What is that question? And how can we begin to delimit, as I like to say, what is humanly possible? What can we actually do? What can we become the best at and flourish with that work? I will also say that what brings me here tonight as well is the being nurtured and being cared by the Susquehanna Valley Ethical Society. I was really able to see a community down in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, that continues to really embody, to practice, to reframe, to recast. What does it mean to be an ethical culture society? What does it mean to be an American Humanist Association chapter? right? And holding that multiplicity of identities, because again, we recognize that we do not hold the monopoly within our movements, but that we're actually honoring and centering the evolution and change of the human condition. Greg?
Thanks, Anthony. I think the way that I want to answer this question is that I'm here for the moment. This is a liminal place, and the processes that happen within that liminal place are really of great interest to me. I feel like if we don't steward our processes, then it's possible that we'll do great harm to one another and to those that engage with us. And I think that's something that we need to pay attention to, and really pay attention to the acculturation process. So how we're with one another now is how we will be with one another in the future. So that the time for transformation is actually right now. It's not this constant, perpetual looking forward to some definitive moment or action. It's an ongoing thing. And the decision for how to move forward is part of our transformation. And so when I think about my experience in ethical culture, when I think about the conversations that I've had with members, with lay leaders, with other ethical culture leaders, and with those that have maybe been episodically involved with our movement, I think that particularly again in this moment, if we don't tend to the harm, the trauma that's happened, and if we don't cultivate joy and worthwhileness within our movement, then these dynamics are going to carry forward with us into wherever we end up. So really taking that stance of this moment and this process and understanding what it is, working to steward that and facilitate it. And I'm here less about outcome and more about process, about becoming maybe rather than being. So yeah, and I'll pass the invitation to you, David.
Thank you. Now, I mean, y'all, this is a good group. What I want to say is that the Unitarian Universalists, as well as others, are definitely looking at the demographics. Can liberal religions survive the retirement and then, believe it or not, the death of the boomers? Because we will be gone, and I'm one of them, and so I can say that. I've been a humanist since 1978, officially. It's been a long time. Is the humanism that I joined a generation ago the humanism we want today? Absolutely not. I believe that an organization should always ask, why are we here? And do we even need to bother to be here? I believe that we do need to be here because what I try to really keep in mind in all the stuff that I do is, what about that 14-year-old kid who discovers they are blank in northern Mississippi? I grew up Pentecostal. I had before the internet, I had no information. I thought when I stopped being that kind of Christian, I had to stop being religious in general because I didn't know there was anything else. How do we have a world in which our message of love and truth and justice, how can we be in the world for that kid? That is absolutely essential. And I do believe we can get there. An article I read the other day said that the projection for 2024 liberal voters, Democratic voters in 2024 election, 1/2 will be secular. 1/2 will be secular. So do you want to win that election? Or do you want to, make it so that trans people can't get health care? Let's fight, because we have a message. We do, but yeah, we are coming out of white spaces often, and we haven't let in other people. Read about Black freethinkers sometime. It's horrendous. Jay was talking about a Black minister from Jamaica that we both know about who went to Harlem. This guy got trashed just because he was Black. We couldn't trust him. I mean, what the hell? And so Unitarians gave up the chance to have a liberal congregation in Harlem, for God's sake. Why? Ignorance, racism, prejudice, stupidity. So, let's get beyond that, and let's have a message of justice and love in the world. I believe we can survive the demographic bump that is the boomers, and we can go into the world of leadership that these three beautiful human beings. Sorry, Hugh, but you and I, we will say goodbye to this mortal coil one of these days. I want to leave a strong movement behind. That's my goal. So that's all.
Amen.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate everybody offering their perspective and why they are here, and different perspective, and also looking at crisis, whether it's congregational, whether it's the overall movements, right? And also if we look at our own personal take on just like what we have seen within ethical culture as a whole, as you kind of talked, David, you kind of were bringing us into like this idea of love and justice. And I think like one of the things is like the way that this happens is through us looking at number one, opportunities that can inform our community. And that also brings us to the power of unity. And some of us in this particular fishbowl have some shared experiences. I would like to say that we are all kind of polyamorous organizationally, to some degree. We if I may stir the pot for y'all, right? But we are some, like I myself am, the community minister at First Unitarian Society. In addition to, I am an ethical culture leader, right? And I hold both of those positions. And so this next question kind of talks about those intersections, if you will. And so since you all have experience in some form, the UUA, maybe the AHA, or the UUHA, if you will, which is the Unitarian Universalist Humanist Association, which is another scale within the UUA. All of these institutions are any of these institutions in any shape or health to provide temporary support to the current AEU during their sabbatical, or is there another alternative, especially when we think about also our leadership and our congregations that would like to maintain some sense of polity and congregational standing, in addition to those leaders who are credentialed, and we just had a new leader currently credentialed?
Yeah, if I can launch us off to that question, I think that one of the core questions that I ask myself, right, is this of what are the pathways that the organizations are providing for us? And I say this because we have to recognize that if we want to or not, we're in competition, right? We're in a positive way. We're in competition with the hundreds of denominations across the board, right? Philosophically, religiously, spiritually, ethically, that for centuries have established and come back constantly to reimagine their training, their polity, their network, their mentorship, their, you name it, right? Like they're constantly doing that reimagining, right? And so for me is, if I am choosing to identify, and I'll use the non-theist as an umbrella concept, if I identify myself as a non-theist and I feel called or have been identified by a community or organization to be in a leadership capacity, how am I being nurtured, sustained, trained, mentored, and cared for during this process? And I think that is important because it's not just amassing degrees and credentials and courses, as it is looking at the formation of character and the identity that one is seeking to emerge from and also flourish with. And so I think, kind of invoking back, as you read, Rachel, for Hugh, right? Historically, there was the Humanist Institute, which for decades served as the hub, if we will, or the institute to train leaders across the spectrum, right? Of within and around and beyond our movement. And so I think it's this question of then, are we going to come together? Are we going to remove the silos? Are we going to recognize that it is a time to come together as a community and say, hey, when we're training folks, when we're looking to support, educate, create network, we're going to send our folks, maybe this unorthodox plug, right? The United Theological Seminary in the Twin Cities, which as a as a UCC seminary decided and stated, we are opening our doors and welcoming the non-theist communities to have their own track of formation, their own accredited either Masters of Arts in Leadership Studies or a Master of Divinity, and they, with their leaders and educators, right, and professionals, trained their generations alongside us, right, so that they can go into the world and create beauty, create transformation, create liberation. Mm-hmm. And so for me, that's what I carry, and that's what I hold when I'm thinking about these questions.
Yeah, well, if I can jump in, Anthony, because Anthony, I forwarded an email to Anthony the other day. We got an email from a guy in downstate Minnesota who's serving in a federal prison. He's a humanist well, he wants to be a humanist chaplain, but the Federal Bureau is requiring 2,000 hours of supervised training. Well, where do you get it? How do you get it? And that's why, and I get these, because I'm out there as a humanist, but, and then I send it to Anthony and, it's like, wow, but we need an infrastructure. Again, we're talking, Anthony's at Tufts, 40% of the students at Tufts University are secular. Are not, it doesn't mean they don't believe in God. It means that they're not connected to any religious tradition whatsoever. We have, the harvest is great, and the harvesters are few. Jesus said that, and it's still true for us humanists out there. How do we get the training? Because we've got people on the ground wanting the training. How do we do that? So, yeah.
I'm going to hop in there real fast. I want to, I think, when it comes down to, the part of the question that says that these institutions, do they have any kind of shape or health that can provide support? My relationship has been deeply intertwined with the AHA, First Unitarian Society, and in addition to the UUHA. And I really think that one of the things if I think about this question, being mindful of our values is one thing, being mindful of how they are implemented is another, right? I can't say, even though I was the coordinator for the conference, was there an infrastructure that suggested the values that represent my support and allegiance to supporting Black women in leadership, right? Does that happen? No, not with the AHA right now for me. And if we're going to think about how we do our own work, right? How are we supporting women in this movement, Black women in this movement, right? Who don't I'm talking about like getting rid of the idea of the overall status quo, right? And really flipping our organization to do the reimagining necessary, that really speaks to the things that we all want to harp on. We want to support trans folk. What would it look like if if we really did have an outspoken, very clear, boldly brilliant trans person on our board, right? Or in leadership? Do we have the infrastructure for that? And should we expect for them to operate using the old guards or the country club behavior rules that we created? I'm sorry, but I gotta say that because I don't work off of old guard rules and I don't work off of country club behavior, right? But I'm glad to be present with you, offer you brand new ideas, and hopefully we can collaborate together to create something that's strategic, meaningful, and offers us both an inherent worth between each other, right? That's an exchange of value and the implications of value and how they show up in the world. But if we're not willing to change that infrastructure, right, we can hook up with any institution we want to. But if they struggle to meet the framing of what we imagine ethical culture to be in the very essence of its name, to be a society of culture, to work within the frameworks of being mindful and healthy, which is how I define ethical for those who want to be very, who don't know what that word might necessarily mean for them. But for me, that's what it means. If it's healthy for me and it's meaningful for me, that's ethical, right? I find that that's something that I push on. I do believe that for those, I think there's a distinction that needs to be made, that there are those societies in our movement that are more community-based practice, rooted in activism and social justice. They are not necessarily interested in a liturgical religious formation that might require a little bit more song and dance and meditation, right? But we need both, right? We need both. And simultaneously, our societies all operate differently. And as a result, I want us to point to, like, the AHA can be has been for some of us an affiliate regarding maybe our secular work. But when it comes down to our congregational work, there is no framework for polity, and there are not updated frameworks, just to name those in the space. And so this is why we might want to look at values within the UUA and the UUHA regarding some of our congregational polity and our bylaws, and push and challenge them to make sure that they work within our understanding and within our framework to create more flourishing communities that speak to the needs of the two, what I would call the two distinct styles that we do see within ethical societies. And so, as we think about that, I don't, my path would be like, let's just go straight for the UUHA, but I do know there's some globally up if we got to deal with the UUA, right? So let's be real, it ain't easy, but it ain't easy being that way. But I think there is something healthy there if we really decide to find meaning in trying to think about that relationship. And I'll be honest, as someone who's been in this movement, who has never been stationed at a congregation in ethical culture for a long period of time, or being a temporary, in all fairness, and I don't say this to societies that have held me. So Susquehanna, I'm not talking about you, but I will say, like, I want to make sure that we are protecting our clergy. For those of you who don't know what clergy feels like in your arena, I wish you did, to some degree. It is nothing more powerful than having a secure leader who can facilitate vision making with you, who can walk alongside you in moments of grief, who can also affirm you in moments of your love and your happiness, and at the same time seek out a love language for the community that holds y'all all together. It's very moving, and it's very enduring, and it takes training to do that work, because everybody ain't got that kind of patience, and mine gets tried every once in a while, and I might be losing a lock every once in a while too, just because I'm so stressed out. But like, at the end of the day, I think that that's just something I want to also state when it comes down to the health of when we think about our leadership is involved. I want them to have a place that they are secure. So I'm going to pass that on to Hugh, and we're going to keep it moving. Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Jay. Yeah, just a quick tag on to what you were saying. Whether the UUA or the AHA can help us, they already have. I mean, that's one of the things. A lot of programs that are in ethical culture came from the Unitarian Universalists, the Coming of Age program, it was greatly came somewhat our whole lives, the sexuality program, and a lot of them are very relationally based. Because I do see something special about ethical culture focusing on relations. And I think we can draw from both of those organizations. In particular, I agree the UUA having the congregational focus is important to us. But I just want to take a half a step back and just say, whatever direction we go in, I would like to see is to give us more space. So, for example, I kind of like the sabbatical idea, and I know that worries people because you don't know what's going to come out the other side. But it's precisely what excites me, because I think we have to reinvent ourselves to a degree. And that reinvention is going to take a lot of work, more work than it would be to do business as usual. But, Greg just finished up with Meadville Lawn Bar. And, Greg, do you want to talk a little bit about the mix?
Yeah, sure. I think, what I want to say, I guess, as I imagine what might come from what we're terming as a merger or a merge, I think of it more as a temporary partnership. And so I asked the question, what would work for us right now? What I hear most prominently when we talk about merge is a fear of assimilation, a fear of a loss of identity. And for me, determining and stewarding and facilitating ethical culture is our responsibility. It's up to us. It's not up to our partner. It's not up to whoever we merge with. And an ethical culture, I think, can remain distinct if we take this responsibility seriously. So I think as part of that, really stepping back and examining what our assumptions are. Like we are often on this panel, I think in our discussions, using we and our, like who is we? Who is our? As a national movement, I think one of the things that we don't do well is take regionality into account. I think the experience of a circle in a smaller town is much different than the experience of a flagship society, up in New England, for instance. And so for me, the idea of a temporary partnership, or a partnership that allows ethical culture to really do that deep examination that is being called into by sabbatical, the greatest benefit there is finding a partner who can model or provide mechanisms for operations, accountability, and formation really at each level, whether it's our circles or societies or our members, our lay leaders and our leaders, even all the way up to our polity and governance. And a partner organization can hold that container strongly enough and long enough to allow us to get into practice, because I don't see that we are in good practice right now. I'm speaking from an institutional standpoint, because there are societies that are moving along and are quite blissful. They're doing meaningful work. They are embedded within their communities. They are in relationship with who they are surrounded by. And so, I think the challenge is then knowing what ethical culture is. What do we have to offer? We talk about our values. I'm not clear that there is a shared understanding of what our values are, or what ethical culture is, or what makes ethical culture unique. And we can't take seriously the responsibility to determine and steward and facilitate ethical culture if we don't know what we are determining and stewarding and facilitating. So I'll just end my share here by saying that, I do think there is a lot of really healthy practice to be found in other organizations. I am more familiar with the Unitarian Universalist Association. I'm not clear that would be I'm not clear that we are ready to enter into a partnership, frankly, or into any kind of merge. And so again, stepping back to maybe my original point, what is needed right now? Because if we don't address some of what's happening right in the moment and do that triage, frankly, then however we step into this new space, if we don't do it with clear understandings and aim toward healthy relationship, then we might just be doing harm to ourselves and further fracturing the movement.
I'm going to step in here and just let you know you have 5 minutes left in the fishbowl. Thank you.
That's
Can I just throw in one piece of heresy, if possible? Because the creativity that I'm looking for too includes, like, what is the role of clergy in ethical culture? Should the skills that a leader learns in ethical culture be learned by lay leaders? Can the distinction be more porous? And you know, Jay, I'm all for protecting everybody in ethical culture, and leaders sacrifice a great deal, and we carry a lot. But I guess I want to even blow up that potential that, well, maybe we have something totally different, where there's a sliding scale of leadership and different forms of leaders. Because I know a lot of lay leaders in ethical culture ready to step up, and we want to bring them in and bring their skills in. So I just wanted to put that on the table.
Yeah, I just want to insert right back in that, you know, I think in this, I don't think this is unique to us as a movement, but I think we often treat ourselves as our own fishbowl, and we are only concerned with ourselves, and we are only concerned with what is familiar to us right now in the moment. And I really do believe that in order for us to survive, in order for the movement to offer something that is worthwhile, that we're going to need to broaden our gaze and look beyond the boundaries of our institutions and look beyond the boundaries of our current identity as ethical culture, and really say, you know, how can we reflect the society in which we find ourselves and work toward and move us toward that human flourishing, Anthony, that you've named, and how can we move us toward that ethical perspective and approach, Jay, that you named. I think that's really important to recognize that we are treating ourselves a little bit as in a silo, and not accounting for how for the context in which we find ourselves, you know, socially, particularly within the United States, since most of us are familiar with that context.
Right. You know, as someone who's survived the ministerial process in Unitarian Universalists myself, I can say it is, you know, it is just almost insane in its requirements, and it is almost designed to keep people of color out. And I say that because it does not recognize life experience. So your life experience, you know, I have 3 terminal degrees, for God's sake. How terminal can you get? But I had to get another one in order to be a UU minister. That's just a really weird thing. And unfunded mandates. We're going to tell you that, okay, you got to go do your clinical pastoral education. It's going to take you 6 months. And guess what? You have to pay. We ain't going to pay you. You pay. I mean, what does that do to people who want to be in our movement? And after you get into the ministerial situation, don't quote me, but you can, because I'm retiring. But it's a good old boy network. You know, it's a smoky back room. There is no accountability. This group will tell you, Greg, don't come back, right? You're not a minister. We don't see a minister in you. Don't come back. You just spent 4 years of your life for absolutely nothing. And guess what? We won't tell you why, because we don't have to. And who do I see get sent back for another year of this and that? Trans people, number 1. Gay people, number 2.
Come on.
And people of color never even get there. So, I mean, and so ethical culture and the way we do things could be ethical and just for new leaders, especially people of color. We could build that, because the UU system will not allow it. I have fought it for 15 years and I can't beat it. So sorry, but you know, I have to go off sometimes but that's the way I see it. That's the way I see it. And we can do better.
Thank you.
It's time. It's time. It's actually 7:50. Thank you, David. 7:51 actually. And I want to get us moving. As much as I see these other delicious questions that are resonating with us, we're gonna actually go ahead and remove the spotlight and turn on the Q&A here so that we can get the ball rolling. And Anya, you'll be stacking the questions and helping us facilitate that, my love. And Jake, just pin only the specific questions that you see that we need to put on the forefront of this talk.
All right. I saw that Michael had his hand up first. Michael, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, I actually want to address the last thing that you said, not you, Hugh, which is he was talking about lay leaders. Back around 2000, the Leader Council, in its infinite wisdom, decided to eliminate the adjunct leader position, and we happen to have one in the person of Stan Wayne. And then they put all the officiants on a really short leash on what they were and were not able to do, with a whole set of new qualifications. And they basically made lay leadership on the pastoral side almost impossible for anyone who wasn't a certified leader. Stan Wayne, by the way, was a clinical psychologist. So I want to address that. But I also have a question. Will the local societies continue meeting as usual?
Oh, I assume so, Michael. I think nobody's expecting any, this is just, I mean, if it's sabbatical, it's just the American Ethical Union sabbatical. Yeah, the societies move on. Continue. Thanks. Anya?
Thank you, Michael.
Great. Dror, did you have a question?
I don't have a question. I want to say thank you very much. I'm very impressed by the number of people here and the quality, but I'm a little bit surprised that people seem not to understand what the Societies for Ethical Culture is about. And I'm saying for a reason, because we're a little bit different from congregations that get together to have a gathering and for being, uplifting for themselves. We have a purpose, and I think that it's very intentional that we're not the societies of ethical cultures. We're not the ethical culture societies in the original term. We are for ethical culture. Am I making myself clear? Our purpose is to spread ethical culture, and that purpose, to come together, to be in a place to seek higher ground, to make the world better, to be for spreading a culture like in a Petri dish where the culture spreads is our purpose. And we can't do that, in my opinion, by joining groups whose idea is to self-improve only. And this is our history, and it's a very impressive history, and that's what got me into it. And this is, when I saw the writing on the wall, the place where people come to seek the highest is holy ground, that I could become a spiritual, religious person by trying to make the world better, is what makes me an ethical culturist. And I would propose that the Unitarians and the other groups come and join us.
Thanks, Dror. Jackie, did
George.
you have a question?
Yeah, we have to end at 8 o'clock with these questions. Thank you.
I have a comment about Dror's statement, which is we have been opposed to proselytizing. So I'm not so sure that it's a clear picture that we are to spread ethical culture. I think we are to live lives that embody ethical culture, and people gain from that or notice, hopefully. But proselytizing during the years I've been involved, which is like 40 2 or something like that, has been frowned upon. My question is related to the fact that I was totally unaware that there was a UUHA until I saw it in the scenarios. And I looked it up and totally was not at all impressed. Their website indicates that they exist to inculcate or make humanism more acceptable in the UUA. I could care less about doing that. So
Amen,
I guess
amen, Jackie. Yeah.
David, do you want to say something about that?
No, she's absolutely right. I mean, it on paper it looks like a great idea, but in reality, I don't think it would work very well. I mean, what we really do is fight for humanism within basically fight the minister structure of the UUA to promote humanism. So I don't really think that's it, Jackie. But I think that we can think around that, but that's not the one to use, I don't think. I used to be president of the group. I was on the board for years. I don't think it's a real viable way of doing it.
Alan, do you have a question?
There. Okay. It just seemed to me that if you're looking at joining with others, you have to join with others at a point where you all come together. And therefore, you have to decide what that point is going to be, that you want others to come together with you. And if it's humanism, then you have to proselytize humanism. I think if you say we aren't going to proselytize, then that's to say we don't want anyone else with us, because we have the word. We know what it is, and it's obvious that we don't, because as an organization we have very few people in it.
Jackie, did you have another question?
Yeah.
I do. Actually, I'd like David to say what he meant by it. It's coming together with UUHA is not the way to do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we're looking at the difficulties in the AEU, the way to solve those difficulties, I don't believe, is to join with the UU Humanists. I do think, there in the 19th century, we had the Free Religious Association that was an umbrella group for that. I do believe that there might be room for something, like the Free Thought Union, or we don't want an FU as an acronym, but something, like that might, an umbrella group that might then, because we already have the structure for the leadership, as Anthony was talking about. Anthony Cruz is now on the, or will soon be on the Humanist Society board, which is the accreditation thing for the AHA. This might be a way to do, ethical culture could do their own track within that, for example. So that could be done. And I have a PhD. I've written a lot of curricula and all of that stuff. So, I can help in that way. My only, interest is in helping out, frankly. So I can help, maybe.
Okay, I think we're gonna move into another fishbowl now. Thank you, Anya. Okay, so we're gonna spotlight the next group of people, and please mute yourself. Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining tonight. I'm not going to join your fishbowl, but I am going to jump in if things get off track. So just know I'm hovering. I do have a couple of agreements. I'm going to ask you all to agree. I meant to say them before, but forgot. For everyone to step up and step back. So this is a non-judgmental space and you're free to speak here. Also be mindful of how much time you're talking. And if you have spoken and someone has not, to please step back, okay, and let others speak because we don't have too much time. It's like 15 minutes, so we're going to talk fast. Please don't interrupt each other. Of course, the only caveat is that I might interrupt you. And please be curious and ask each other clarifying questions. And I have a couple of questions. I'm going to start off with a couple of questions. And similar to what we were talking about before, do you think that the AEU is in crisis? And anybody can jump in and then pass it.
I guess
I think we have willed ourselves into a crisis. It would be easy to drift along. We decided this is a good time to look ourselves, to face the problems and to see how we could operate more efficiently, more effectively. And doing so, that means we are removing bandages from wounds and then making them more obvious. But I think it is a healthier situation to try and see how we can work to make ourselves more effective. And I think that we have chosen to create, to try and transform ourselves, and then we've created a focal point for transition, and this is okay.
Yeah, I think agree with Hank there. I think that we don't want to run on the bank. We don't want to think it's a crisis and then everybody leaves, everybody pulls out. That's a concern of mine. I haven't been as closely connected with AEU as I think I was when I was president and so forth at the Philadelphia Ethical Society. But I can see from the numbers that have been accumulated that there is an issue here. I can't see it as, and I know that within our society, within our ethical society, there's not a great awareness or engagement with AEU. I think the pandemic has been helpful in the sense that we've had programs from the AEU that we've been able to zoom in on. And I think that connects us. And that is a hopeful part for me. I can't imagine that I could make a convincing argument or anybody would care in society if I said, I think AEU is in crisis. So I don't know what that adds up to because it's not a very well formulated presentation, but those are some thoughts that I have.
Thank you, Nat. Kandra, I think you were going to say something.
Yeah, so I guess I think if you're looking to the future, I think about like, who's coming up behind, right? And when I look behind, I don't see a lot of people my age, and I'm not that young. I don't see a lot of diversity. And so if we're thinking about growing as a movement, I don't see that happening. I don't see the framework for that to happen. And I don't know realistically how, I think about what are we leaving behind there, because there's nobody behind to really pick up the pieces and continue the work if this is something that we think is valuable. And I think people are sort of reacting strongly to the word crisis and not really looking at the reality. And well, I wouldn't even say they're not looking at the reality, right? Because we've known for years that membership is declining. The AEU is not bringing in as much money, right? So this is not a new problem, but it seems to be a problem that hasn't been adequately addressed, and you don't really resolve it by not addressing it and by not taking a hard look at ourselves and the problems that we have and trying to do, at least, making that effort to do better. I'll pass it to Emily.
I would say that we're sorry. Two devices in the same room, so apologies if that's echoing. But I would say we're in time of opportunity because I worry that crisis makes people panic and get distracted from solutions. I'm remembering that the last time that we did listening sessions, that was when we developed an ED position, which was great concept, but it was also a very overloaded list. And I think that it's also fair to state that due to some limited funds and conflict at that time, that also caused us to not be able to cater to all of the needs that people wanted the executive director or the staff to handle. So this is kind of a great opportunity to redo that idea, reimagine staff, refigure committees, and also, while maybe not fully doing a merge, reestablishing our partnerships and coalition building, because as much as we are the AEU is the only organization that is publicizing and spreading ethical culture, we're not alone in terms of we're not the only religious humanist group, we're not the only humanist, we're not the only free thinkers out there, whatever label you want to use. There's a lot of folks, both affiliated and unaffiliated, with the values that we promote.
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything else you want to talk about with regard to this?
I don't mind going. I'm new as the president of the Bergen Society, so it's a lot of this conversation is new to me, and most of the folks on this call. And a lot of what I will say that I've heard around AEU is coming to me secondhand. So I'm really glad to be able to experience it directly myself and some of the conversations. I think at least something that is coming to me that I've had some experience with is there's a crisis of trust, if you will. And I think that that's a key focus for me within my Bergen Society. And I think that's maybe something that's worth working on at the AEU. Now, how that happens, what that conversation is, whether that's in the context of a sabbatical or whether that's in the context of the type of reimagining that Emily, you just mentioned in terms of organizationally. I'm open to a lot of different ideas. And so I'm not here to say, here's what I think, right? I'm really am trying to learn as much, but I will say that, my commitment is to my Bergen Society at the moment. And what I would like to see is to reestablish that trust within the society. I have a fairly, I don't want to say a restive board, but a board that does not really feel a lot of trust for the AEU and has recently acted on that.
Thank you. Thanks very much for that. That's a very good point. And maybe riffing off of that, and I don't know if anybody wants to talk about that, but there are a lot of individual voices in the movement, and honoring those individual voices is actually part of the ethical culture. And I'm wondering if the AEU had its own voice, what would it be saying right now? What do you hear the AEU saying? If the organization had its own voice, not your voice, not your society's voice, but the voice of the organization. What is it asking you to do?
Are you asking all of us?
Thank you.
I think what the AEU should be doing is meeting the key needs of the member societies, working. I believe in proselytizing. I believe in creating new groups, new humanist groups, so that our children, if they move to Oshkosh, can have the same benefits that we enjoyed as members of societies. I think it is important that we should have institutions like the President's Council, where each of us help each other from our experience to do a better job. I'd like to see us do something similar for the directors of ethical education, because Sunday school has been an important part, I think, of our mission. Those are the things I think I would like us to be doing.
Yeah, I don't hear a singular voice, right? I think because our societies are so different, the needs are also varied. And I see that the AEU hasn't really found a good way to adequately meet all of those needs. And that's a really difficult thing to do, right? Trying to be everything to everyone and to do it well. I hear concern, right? I think people are concerned that the AEU is not growing. But I also hear like hope and a willingness to really consider what it could be doing and wanting to do that, because I think people sort of see that as being vital to the health and the growth of the movement. But it won't be easy, as you said before. I don't think anybody thinks it's an easy task. I would hope not, but it would require listening to all of those voices, certainly, and really like having those really deep conversations about what individual societies need, what individual members need, and what future members, right? Like thinking beyond who's here. Like, what do you need to bring in those new people that we say we want? How do we change so that we are the more welcoming societies and union that we want to be? Eric,
I'll go. So I am a kind of a nuts and bolts guy, right? I mean, I just trying to keep the community together here in Bergen County, and there's enough to do on a day-to-day basis just to keep the lights on and keep things running. And I also see the AEU really serving a very nuts and bolts purpose vis-a-vis my society and maybe all of your societies. I see it as a clearinghouse, and I think that insofar as it's able to be that type of a clearinghouse for things like best practices, for our methods and our metrics, and I think this will all come together, and the AEU doesn't have to necessarily define itself. I think in doing this type of basic work for the societies, that's how it will be defined, by the summation of what we all are individually, both individual societies, separate societies, and individual people who come and speak and share what we're about and what our vision for that world is. And so I'm not sure that it's useful for the AEU to spend a lot of time figuring out what it is. I would much personally, I think, would rather see the AEU serving this synthetic function, that is to say, to bring together all of these different diverse tendencies and opinions and thoughts, and to like create that Venn diagram rather than try to say, here's what the Venn diagram is, let's let it happen organically. And I think that does happen when the AEU is really, as I say, developing best practices. Hank, I liked your proposal very much because I found it to be very practical in terms of supporting Sunday schools, supporting leaders, and supporting struggling or new developing societies. And I do think that there's a real responsibility for established societies like the Bergen Society to affirmatively get out and promote and provide resource that the AEU could use to develop and support our fellow societies.
Yeah, I want to build on the notion of welcoming and relationship building, which I think are very important in our orientation to life. And I think we could make more of that. This is a situation where there's a lot of conflict in society. Not a lot, but it often polarized, as we all are aware, I think. And the notion to me, and I think to many people, is of being a welcoming place for diversity is important. And if we hold that kind of thing is in common, that's a major reason that people would come to us, then I think that's something that we ought to voice. We ought to put out as best we can. I have really felt at the Ethical Society in Philadelphia, we do not have many children. I've worked with that for 15 years anyway, and we have occasionally people come in. So I think families, we talk about young people. Yes, we want young people, but I think it's better to think in terms of see if we can do things for families that are coping and having events. Now, this may be a little story that's told and not true, but I have understood that the Brooklyn Society really built I don't know what it's like now. I think with Tete there, it's probably pretty well children oriented. But at any rate, that they built that not because they went out to get people who are members, but because they went out to use the facilities to support families and support families that are interested in not the divisive kind of orientation that the society is often presenting. So I'm saying what we ought to voice is relationships and focus on families, young families.
Thank
They
you.
move. There's a flux here because of the nature of where they are in their lives.
Yeah.
But we've never reached a critical mass there, and I think that would be good.
Thank you, Nick. We only have about 1 minute left, so I don't know if anybody, I know it goes fast. There will be a time to debrief after this. Is there anything else that, Emily, you wanted, because you didn't get a chance to talk again, if you wanted to say something, please.
Yeah, I was kind of pausing because I didn't really have an answer to the voice of AEU, but sounds like since we've all kind of been jumping off of that, I think that kind of like what Kandra was saying, like I do feel like the foundation of ethical culture values the eliciting the best in others, the being the responsible, active, global citizens, yada yada yada, are the things that we want to grow and inspire in all ages, and hope that also attracts people and gets people really engaged. I feel like but the actual like implementing that is going to get us, we need to kind of really face what are our preferences, what are our traditions, what are our requirements. And my kind of concern or frustration with the management of the AEU over time is that the AEU has often acted and run like a small society, which is great for the new budding societies who needed that basic help. It's not been great for the bigger societies, and for pushing us to figure out how ideal, amazing a society can be. So I do think that in order for the AEU to do that training, be that hub, be that resource, always be giving and providing instead of taking, we really it needs to be more robust and have more talent and also be more direct in what it needs from others. So like when we say we need volunteers, let's make a clearer description of what that volunteer is expected to do and needs to know, and how they can ask for or receive help when needed.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to unspotlight you, and Anya's going to take it off.
All right. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask? Just use the raise hand function and I'll call on you, or drop it into the chat and we can read it out. Joanna, I see you have your hand raised. Do you have a question?
So everybody's been commenting, so my question is sort of a comment. I remember growing up in the Brooklyn Ethical Society that so many of the families that were there were the result of some kind of integrated marriage, whether it was Catholic and Jewish or Black and white. So we were a haven for people who didn't have another place to go. In a way, that might have been like a default choice. But it does bring up two questions. One is, what niche are we filling now? There was a need then that we were fulfilling that was drawing people to our organization. What need are we fulfilling now? And then also thinking that might have been a default choice for people. What proactive things do we want to offer people, as well as being a landing place, a safe landing place for people who have nowhere else to be?
Those are great questions.
Yeah, that's a really good question. But I'm a kid of a mixed marriage. My mother is Anglican, my father is Baptist, but she was the only one who went to church, so we went to Anglican church. And I think that for a lot of people, for me personally, I come for the community. And I can say that I think it has also given my family like a sense of comfort that I have a community, even though I'm not religious, I'm an atheist, but I think having sort of a home where I can, be in relationship with other people who share my values is valuable to me. So I think there are a lot of people, I think particularly people of color, who come from really religious communities, right? You want a sense of community, but you don't want the doctrines attached to it. Is one area that I don't think that we fully explore, because I think you also have to understand where people are coming from, and be accepting of that, and understand, I guess, some of the traumas that they might come with, some of the traditions that they might come with, that bring them to ethical culture.
Michael, did you have a question?
Yes, I want to react to, I'm terrible with names. Is it Eric, guy from Bergen?
Yes.
Yes. That, one of the things I see as necessary for the AEU is to kind of be the keeper of our primary values and vision. If we don't have a core vision that defines ethical culture, we're going to have 23 organizations wandering off into the wilderness, all having different ideas of who we are.
Yes.
So I think it's important that somewhere there's a process for, I hate to use this word because it's too religious, but kind of keeping us on the straight and narrow of what our real identity is, as differentiated from everyone else out there. We also need to find a way to get people to be enthusiastic about donating enough money to keep all our levels functional. We don't have the promise of heaven and the fear of hell to motivate people. But we need to find some way to inspire people.
Thanks, Michael. Emily, did you have a question?
I have a note and then a comment because I didn't get to do it during the fishbowl. Promise will be quick. First note, if someone can turn the chat back on, because it looks like that's still disabled and maybe helpful. The note I just wanted to say, since American Humanist Association was brought up, I feel it's only that I kind of remind folks that you can be a chapter or affiliate of the AHA and hold on to your AEU society status, not a competition. Encouraged to have both, because we provide different things. Some of your groups already are. Also, as mentioned in the first fishbowl, there are education opportunities that have always been available to not just leaders, lay leaders, celebrants, chaplains, yada yada. But one separate thing that the AEU does not do that AHA welcomes and invites you to do is the legal legislative stuff. So, I think the relationship is always there, just not if because AHA is secular, you would have an educational nonprofit tax exemption, not religious. Thanks.
Okay, I think we're going to start our next fishbowl. Sorry if we didn't get to your questions. There she is.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, everyone. Again, I'm just going to ask you to please step up and step back. This is a non-judgmental space and you're free to speak. Just be mindful of how much time you are talking. And if you've spoken and someone else hasn't, could you just step back and let other people speak? Please don't interrupt each other, although I might interrupt you just to keep us on track and with time. And please be curious to ask each other clarifying questions. So I'm going to start off the conversation, and of course it can go organically and you can take it where you want, but we really want to stay focused on, kind of talking about the scenarios. So I'm going to ask you what you imagine the impact of the sabbatical would be on the AEU and the larger humanist movement. So it's kind of thinking beyond the sabbatical. What do you think the impact might be as you imagine it?
Well, the sabbatical, I'm not sure I really understand what would happen during the sabbatical. So I'm not sure that I'm assuming that the trends that are going on right now are going to continue to go on. So because the trends are basically set by what happens in the societies, and that I don't see the societies changing significantly because AAU is on a sabbatical. In fact, I'm kind of asking myself the question, what would happen if AAU just announced that next year AAU is going to shut down and the societies are going to have to figure out how to reconstruct an organization that will meet their needs and let them figure out what the new organization is going to look like. That's what's been going through my mind as I've been listening this evening. And I'll step back at that.
I'll jump in. I'll try to be very brief. Eric, that's excellent. That was exactly the visioning discussion that was held among the presidents with the board early in 2022. What would happen if we didn't have an AEU? And they began to talk about why they would actually like to have one and what they thought AEU ought to be doing. We haven't pursued that very much, but that discussion has happened, and there may be others who want to continue it because I think it's a real question. I want to add for this particular question, and first of all, what has struck me throughout this discussion is that we need to make a distinction between the American Ethical Union and organization and the ethical culture movement, which is a philosophy and belief system. And the two are tied together in terms of function, but part of what we're talking about is the future of this organization and what this organization ought to be doing, which is actually what Eric is asking. What are you doing for us? Or what are you doing at all? Why do we have you? And then I'd like to go more directly to the question, and again, I wish I would be shorter. If the AEU went on sabbatical, what effect would it have on the larger humanist movement? And I'd say not much. We are a member of the Secular Coalition of America. We do occasionally have partnerships in various ways with the American Humanist Association. We try to be supportive of actions that other organizations are taking. But I think, at least my experience in the last 2 or 3 years, actually even longer, through the Ethical Action Committee and now as a member of the board, is that I haven't seen opportunities that everybody was fully aware of. There may occasionally be, I think Bart went to some meetings. I don't know that we saw a lot of reports. I think others may be, is Jay going to meetings? Some people are going now and then to meetings, but we're not really evident exhibiting at their conferences, speaking and doing things. It's fairly small and limited to the people, small number of people doing things, and not a broader sense of the movement. So I don't think that I think the biggest effect is going to be what are our societies going to do if the AEU goes on sabbatical. I'm not sure that the humanist movement would notice very much. So that's just me.
Well, and I think that, you can broaden it and and within your fishbowl, and Anya and people who haven't spoken, if you want to talk about what the sabbatical would mean to societies or what it would mean to the humanists, go for it. Go, Anya.
Sure, I'd love to address that. And first of all, Carolyn, I'm really glad that you made the distinction between the organization of the AEU and ethical culture as a movement, because I think that is a really important distinction to make. What we are talking about here is a sabbatical for the AEU, the organization. But the reason why we would be doing that is to facilitate a reimagination that would set the movement as a whole back on a track of growth and actually serving a purpose that draws people to our movement. So that's where we would be coming from with that. Yes, the org is going on sabbatical in service to the larger movement, for sure. And from a kind of larger humanist umbrella perspective, I can say, while we are very tiny as a movement and getting smaller by the day, I think that we have a historical standing within the larger humanist scope. I mean, we as an organization were a founder of what is now called Humanist International and has existed for about 70 years now. That's not insignificant. That organization is doing some really important work in trying to help humanists at risk around the world. That is not insignificant at all. So I think if we went on sabbatical, that would really signal to a lot of people that are in this bigger humanist network that there is reimagining going on, and we can inspire and work together on this. We can inspire one another from humanist group to humanist group. I have a lot of humanist network connections outside the US, outside ethical culture, and they're watching us. They're watching to see what we do because they know that we're really in the thick of it right now. And it's a pivotal moment. And I think if we can really be in a moment of discerning and move forward with the hope that I'm hearing a lot of people have, I think we can really make some ripples in this larger community that really matter in the long run. So that's kind of my take on it. I'd love to hear from Jackie or Joanna.
I have some concern about what would happen if the AEU was on sabbatical. It's unclear to me, and it's actually a bit scary to me that the unknown is often scary. I want to say that when I think about affiliation, I am more comfortable with AHA than I am with UU. Even though I have been a friend of the ethical, I'm going to get this out, of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Asheville for 32 years, the whole time I've lived in Asheville. and continue to be, and was a pledging friend even before pledges were required of friends. I am so aware of the schism in the UU family between the more Christian acting and practicing UUs and the humanist UUs. That's an uncomfortable place. I don't want to be in a place where I am considered less than. I'd rather for us to stand alone than to be in that position. I'm aware that at one point I believe that we were a part of the Humanist Society, and Emily probably could say more about that. And I, along with Quakers too, I believe, and somebody else. But anyway, I'm more comfortable there, and being the religious wing of the AHA than otherwise. My assumption about having a sabbatical year is that our interim executive director, who's had experience with this kind of thing before, and I'll be honest and say, quite frankly, I think having Rachel on board is the best thing that could have happened to us. I do believe we're in crisis. I believe we are in crisis. This has gotten everybody's attention now, and we're going to do something different about it. We've known about it for years, and we kept doing the same things for years. I think we're at a crisis point, and I don't mean for that to be something that will scare people away. I mean for it to be something that brings us together to figure out where to go next. My assumption is that our interim director will leave us in 1 year or whatever the designated time is. But during the time between the AEU Assembly, when hopefully we as a body decide what scenario we want, she will help us, because of her experience doing this kind of thing, by providing some possible resources that we decide on, that we interview and decide on, that can help us move in the way that we want to move. And the last thing I want to say right now, anyway, is that I do very much favor Hank's proposal. I think there are important things that need to continue, that the AEU needs to continue, that are supports to the ethical societies that we would suffer from if they didn't continue.
Thanks, Jackie. Joanne.
So I cannot answer the question of the impact of a sabbatical on the AEU because my crystal ball is broken, but I can be aspirational about what might happen and what I would hope the effect of a sabbatical on the AEU is that we would have an opportunity to continue conversations like this, where we really dig into who we are, what we believe in, what's important, how we want to grow, and how we want to be in the future. I understand there's a lot of toxic stuff. I don't know what word I want to use here. Toxicity in the relationships in the movement, and I certainly would expect that those would be healed, dealt with, transformed, whatever way they would be lovingly, I'll say transformed. That this process of having sabbatical, although it's directed to the AEU transforming itself, would be a process involving all of the societies, giving us an opportunity for self-reflection as well. and that the upshot of the sabbatical, although you've suggested it might not be the end of the road, but just the beginning of the road, that the upshot would be that we have a clearer vision of who we are in this new century, in this new world that is post-COVID and that is challenging everybody and every institution to rethink itself. We cannot continue the way we have been because we won't continue the way we have been. We will dissolve slowly and continually. So my aspiration for the sabbatical is a new energy in the AEU and among the societies, greater communication, more service from the AEU to the societies. And I'm going to stop there.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much. I think we have, we really only have 1 minute left before we go to debrief and questions. So maybe we'll just do that now so that we have a little bit more time for questions. Oh, Jackie, did you want to say something? Real quick.
Yes. The thing I want to say is that I actually have next to no complaints about the AEU. The AEU has been very helpful to the Asheville Society. I always got the support I got when we started back in 2001 and the years in between. And the president's listserv has provided that largely and often through members of the AEU board participating.
Thank you, Jackie. I know the president's listserv and Trang is on board, and I think John is here too tonight. So thank you, President's Council. Okay, we're going to take you all out of spotlight. Thank you so much. It's been really fun having you there. Okay, I'm going to stop talking. Condra, you're on.
Great. Are there any clarifying questions? Did any of the fishbowl participants say something that you want to dig a little deeper into? Laura Steele?
Yeah, I just had a thought, which is several of you talked about the who we are string of questions. And I'm wondering if any of you have a sense of how you get to that. How do we get to that universally through the societies, through the membership? How do we get to answer those questions?
Did you want to answer that, Condra? Sorry.
Oh, I thought somebody from the fishbowl would answer that question.
Oh. I think I'll jump in just because I think I know, and I'll be efficient. So in the process of the going on sabbatical, it's a very busy sabbatical, as I've said, and there are many exercises and experiences that you will have by society and together that will help you discern the answers to the questions that you have that you will create, and you'll be guided through that process with actual ideas of, well, we want to answer this question, we want to answer this question, and that will guide the process.
So does that result in something that's unifying?
Yes.
Because I think it came up a little bit that a vision needs a commonality amongst us, something that we can all hang our own hats on, but individually, but also collectively. Mm-hmm. And I've always thought that's what's been missing. One of the things that's been missing.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. It will provide a process to develop unity, to tune yourselves to a more collective voice. It can, for sure.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Kay Dundorf, can you unmute yourself, please?
Well, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity and for everybody that shared their thoughts. For me, in terms of, I wanted to kind of think in terms of envisioning beyond a sabbatical or whatever period of time we have to sometimes the term sabbatical freezes me, but a period of time where we're really talking to one another, where we're envisioning who we are. What we have in common is we're all human. Well, beyond that, so if we start at the, we're all human, and if we're bringing out the best in each other, and from the very basic of what Adler had long time ago proposed, without having to focus on those words, but that our goal is to see how we as humans can expand to the time that we're in, which is not we can't rely on old structures, that whether it's the AEU or anything else, let's face it, even doing our finances for people who are in my cohort, we've had to learn how to do things totally differently as things change. Everything has changed, and we're in a global world, and how do we help each other come together for that meaning, for that joy that helps us be the best that we can be, each of us and collectively. And that doesn't mean we all think the same. We have to really honor and celebrate diversity in every aspect of what that means. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a really good point, that we've had to keep changing, right, to keep up. Charles DeBrovner, you have your hand up.
Hi. I must say that I'm very pleased with the increase in number of people, mostly young people, who are secular, but I'm very much dismayed by the increase in privileges that religion is given over the same period of time. And I think that we are not paying enough attention to this. We are ethical culturists, but we are ethical culturists not because we are commanded to be more ethical than other people, but because we choose to be ethical because it is the right and reasonable thing to do. I really think that we should participate in all of the problems that our society is dealing with, but I do think that there would be some value in all of the humanist organizations working together more closely in an organized way to increase the separation of church and state that we have been losing. I've been very pleased that the new societies have chosen to become themselves ethical humanist societies and not ethical culture societies, despite the fact that I have been an ethical culturist for years and years and years. But I do think that that should be one of our important goals.
Thank you. Joanna London, you have a question?
I would like to express my admiration for Rachel when I read the list of things that she's been doing. It doesn't seem humanly possible. And I want to thank you very much for all that you have done and are doing and will continue to do, I hope. I am a little disturbed. The word toxicity in the AEU was used, and I saw something in the American Ethical Union scenarios for the future. Actually, I only see one scenario here, but it mentions long-term unsolved problems, including unaddressed, broadly defined leader misconduct, including ignoring the need to develop a system for reporting misconduct. I know nothing about this, and it's very disturbing to me. And we definitely should have some kind of system for reporting it and dealing with it. And I'm terribly disappointed that it exists. Although I guess where there are human beings, there will be some misconduct. but I like to think that in ethical culture, we are better at dealing with each other, listening to each other, trying to bring out the best in each other than maybe the rest of the country is. And we can certainly see that in the rest of the country, we're not very good at that.
I'd like to respond to that. Thank you. Thank you, Joanna. I appreciate your comment. We're not supposed to know what the problem was. So I'm not going to say much other than that. We're not supposed to know what it is. Apparently, that there was a gag agreement or some such thing. Beside that, though, and I do share your desire for us to act more in line with what we profess to believe. I disagree with Steele, with Laura. Yeah, I think there is supposed to be. I mean, in my mind, there is a unifying concept that we're all supposed to be kind of circling around in some way. We're supposed to believe in the inherent good and dignity of each individual. We're supposed to act to bring out the best in others and thereby in ourselves. I think they're there. I also think that we are human, dadgummit. I can remember how disappointed I was when I found out the Ethical Society of St. Louis, which is where I was introduced to ethical culture in 1978. And because I took my daughter to be in the Sunday school. And I still think to this day, my daughter's past 50 now, that it was the best thing I did for her. I gave her a community of people with my values that didn't make her say she believed things that that I didn't believe. I didn't want her to see me as being hypocritical by joining some, it would have been Christian for me, some Christian church. I adore much of what Jesus is about. And quite frankly, I think from the standpoint of acting like Jesus did, am more Christian than many of the Christians I know and have heard about. Do I want to say anything? Oh, disappointed. When I learned, after I'd been taking my daughter to the Sunday school a few years, that in the 50s, the Ethical Society of St. Louis accepted as members a rather prominent African-American family. I think the husband was a doctor and his wife.
Jackie, got 2 more seconds, really, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, that they did not accept the children of this couple. So I'm done.
I'm sorry, Jackie.
So that is our time. And I think now we go to a closeout question.
Yes. Hi, everyone. And I know many of us have burning commentary. We have burning concerns. We have burning questions. And I hope that you will have the opportunity and take the opportunity to reflect on those questions, maybe write them down, maybe put them in a small little email and forward them. I want, because I know we're going to close up here. You know, I don't think many of us really realize this part of our unique history. But Felix Adler, during the time of his, by the time he was getting ready to pass on, he was already kind of in a very unique place with the movement and saw how in some way American, this kind of humanism kind of was co-opting what would later possibly be ethical culture. And he saw that happening across the globe. And he was very clear that even on his deathbed, that the movement should go with him, and that it shouldn't continue. Many of you are the offspring of people who did not believe that this movement, that this movement should have died a long time ago. And you are the offspring and the future, and were the future. So my question to you is, what has ethical culture called you to do now? Will it die with you? Or will you decide to offer a future? That is your choice. And I would hope that you find something healthy in a future that you will not see, because we don't all get to the mountaintop. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. I have one question. As you can put it in the chat if you'd like. I want to know if you could share one word or something about how this meeting was for you, what your experience was of this meeting, because we're going to have more of them, but it would be great to know very quickly, put it in the chat as you're leaving, how you felt about this meeting, one word. Thank you so much, everyone. See you soon.